Why did the stranger in the park know my name? It was late autumn, the kind of afternoon where the sun casts a golden glow across the sidewalks and fallen leaves collect like memories around your feet. I was walking through Westdale Park, my headphones in, lost in a familiar playlist. That's when I heard a name, spoken aloud. Erin. I turned instinctively, yanking one earbud out. A man was sitting on the bench by the large oak, the one I passed nearly every day. He wasn't waving or gesturing. He was simply looking at me, like he'd been waiting. The look on his face wasn't one of recognition. It was certainty. I didn't recognize him. Tall, maybe mid-30s, dark jacket, book on his lap, and a stillness in his posture that was almost practiced. I paused. My mind raced through possibilities. Had I met him before? A distant acquaintance from college. A coworker I hadn't placed yet. But I was sure I didn't know him. Do I know you? I asked, still not moving closer. His smile was slow and composed. Not yet. I stood there, dumbfounded. I glanced around to see if anyone else had noticed, but the park was unusually quiet. Like the background noise had been turned down. He didn't speak again, and after a few more awkward seconds, I walked away, faster than necessary. That evening, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he was someone who overheard my name once. Maybe he was confused. But deep inside, I felt something stir. The way he said my name, it wasn't like he guessed. It was like he remembered, and I didn't sleep well that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard my name in that calm, exact voice. Not questioning, not tentative. Like a key fitting perfectly into a lock I never knew existed. The next morning, I avoided the park altogether. I spent 3 days deliberately avoiding the park. Took different routes to the office, stuck to side streets on my way home, and refused to even glance down the road that led to Westdale. Still, his voice echoed in my head at odd moments. Brushing my teeth, pouring coffee, just as I was drifting off to sleep. It wasn't threatening exactly, it was unsettling in its ease. He hadn't looked surprised to see me. He had expected it, but on the 4th day, curiosity outweighed caution. I told myself I'd just pass through quickly, not stop, not engage. A fast walk, no eye contact, no lingering, and yet, there he was again, same bench, same posture, book open but unread. This time, he didn't say anything as I passed. He just looked up and nodded once, gently. Something in me slowed. I found myself lowering my pace, the sound of my footsteps soft on the gravel path. I stopped a few feet away. "Who are you?" I asked. It was the most direct thing I could think to say. He closed the book carefully. "You could say I'm someone who remembers things others forget." "That's not an answer," I said. "No," he replied, "but it's the beginning of one." I should have turned and walked away, but I didn't. Something about him held me still, like déjà vu stretched too thin. He didn't try to draw me in. He wasn't pushy or even particularly charismatic, just present, and oddly comforting. "I'm not trying to scare you, Erin," he said softly, like the way you talk to someone who's been crying. "I know this seems strange." "Strange?" I laughed bitterly. "You know my name, I've never seen you before, and you sit here like you're waiting for me?" "I am," he said. Something cold passed through me. "Why?" He looked down, then out at the trees. "Because I lost something, and I think you're the only one who might help me find it." I backed away then, not running, but definitely leaving. That evening, I couldn't shake the conversation. His voice wasn't haunting. It was familiar. Not just the tone, but the cadence, the pause before certain words, the subtle smile when saying something cryptic. Like a dream I hadn't remembered I'd had. And for the first time I wondered, what if I had met him before, and just didn't remember? After that second meeting, things began to shift, subtly at first, then with a kind of precision that made it impossible to ignore. I saw him again 2 days later, not in the park this time, but at the coffee shop near my office. He was in line ahead of me, black coat dusted with rain, ordering a tea with honey. I froze. He didn't acknowledge me right away, until I stepped behind him and the barista asked for my name for the order. "Erin," I said, quietly. He turned then, slowly, like he'd known I was there all along. "We keep meeting," he said, his smile gentle. "This is coincidence," I said, more to myself than to him. "Maybe," he replied. "Or maybe it's something else." I wanted to turn and walk out, but the barista called my name before I could. I took my cup and stepped to the corner of the shop. He didn't follow, didn't sit near me. But when he left, he passed close enough to say, "I'm not the one following you." That night, I had a dream I couldn't shake. The two of us sitting on the park bench, but it wasn't Westdale. It was older, quieter. We were laughing like we'd shared years together. But I couldn't remember the joke, or the time that came before it. By the 5th day I saw him again standing outside the bookstore across from the library. This time I didn't speak. I walked quickly past, only catching the slight nod of his head in my periphery. Day 6 he was exiting the metro as I was getting on. We brushed shoulders. He looked directly at me and said, "Careful today. The step at your office building is loose." Then he disappeared into the crowd. I almost laughed it off until I reached the building and missed my footing. My ankle twisted slightly. Not enough to fall, but enough to stop and blink at the cracked edge of concrete. It couldn't be real. I didn't want it to be real. Day 7, he was back at the park. This time, he stood. "Erin," he said, and the sound of my name was like a lullaby half remembered. "Please? Just a few minutes." I stared at him. "Why do you keep showing up?" "Because I promised," he said. "To who?" He hesitated, then looked at me with something tender and bruised behind his eyes. "To you?" I felt the ground shift beneath me, not literally but internally, as though something was being rewritten inside me without my permission. For the rest of the evening, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I didn't remember making a promise. I didn't remember ever meeting him. But somehow, something inside me responded every time he said my name, as though part of me remembered him, even if my mind couldn't explain why. I wasn't gonna meet him again. That's what I told myself, again and again. As I stood in front of the mirror, brushing my hair and pretending I wasn't thinking about him. I'd spent the past week dodging him, bumping into him, and waking in the middle of the night with his voice circling in my mind. Something had to give. But I wasn't ready for how much he'd give first. I returned to the park one afternoon, deliberately early. Earlier than he'd ever been there before. The wind was cooler than usual, and the benches still damp from a morning drizzle. I took a seat near the statue of the war memorial, far from the old oak tree. Still, he found me. He didn't approach quickly. He walked slowly, deliberately, like every step had already happened before. When he sat beside me, he left space between us. "I know you don't trust me," he said quietly. "You think?" I muttered, but my voice cracked slightly. "I only want to help." I turned to face him. "Then tell me how you know my name. Tell me how you knew about the step at my office." He didn't flinch. "You used to love honey in your coffee until you decided it reminded you of being sick as a kid." I blinked. "What?" He nodded. "Your first pet was a gray rabbit named Lacey. She died when you were 9 and you cried for days." My heart started racing. "Who told you that?" "No one had to. You told me years ago." "I don't remember you," I said. "I've never told anyone about Lacey. Not even my parents remember her name." He looked away. "I know." Then he added, almost reluctantly, "You broke your wrist ice skating when you were 16. You lied about it for 2 days, said it was just a sprain. Your best friend, Margot, forced you to go to urgent care." I stood up. "Because I was there?" he said softly. "Not here. But somewhere close enough." His words didn't make sense, but they felt real in a way that terrified me. No one could have known those things. I hadn't written about them, hadn't shared them, hadn't posted them online. They were mine, quiet memories buried in time. "You're stalking me," I said. "No," he replied. "I knew you before. You don't remember because this isn't the life where we met. Not fully. But I remember. I remember everything." I walked away before I could hear more. My legs were shaking. That night, I sat in bed with my old photo albums, digging through pages I hadn't seen in years, and there she was, Lacey, the rabbit, one single blurry photo. On the back, in my childish handwriting, Lessie. My best friend. I called my mom. She didn't remember. I opened my laptop and stared at my search engine. I typed in his name, first and last, as he'd written it on a napkin and handed to me the previous day. Nothing. Not a social media profile, not a job listing, not even a LinkedIn ghost. He knew me, but the world didn't know him, and I started to believe him. By the next morning, the lines between real and impossible had begun to blur. I'd always thought of myself as a rational person. Someone who believed in facts, logic, the occasional coincidence. But facts couldn't explain a stranger knowing the name of my rabbit from childhood. Logic couldn't account for the subtle way my skin prickled when he looked at me. Like a song I almost remembered, I became obsessed. Every spare moment, I searched. His name, Liam Hensley, wasn't exactly common, but it also wasn't unique enough to not exist. Still, every search came back empty. There were other Liam Hensleys out there, sure. One a veterinarian in Toronto, another a photographer in Manchester. But none who looked like him, none that had lived in my city. None with his face. I tried image recognition. I snapped a blurry photo of him across the street one afternoon, uploaded it into a reverse search engine. No matches. I tried people finder sites, social media, even scraped through archived newspapers for any clue. Nothing. He didn't exist. Or, if he did, he existed just beyond the reach of the world I knew. When I started asking around casually at first, no one had seen him. Not the barista at the cafe, not the receptionist at my office who'd been right there when I limped in after tripping on the broken step. I mentioned his name, showed the photo. They looked at me blankly. "No one like that comes in here," the barista said. "But cute name, though." Even more disturbing, some of my memories were shifting, like fog rolling over places I once knew clearly. The metro station where I swore we'd crossed paths, I visited it again. The tiles were different. A mural I remembered from childhood was no longer there, replaced by a new installation that had supposedly existed for over a decade. I felt like I was falling between two versions of my life. My memories one thing, my reality another. I stopped sleeping properly. Every night I dream of him, not scary dreams, just strange ones. Dreams where we were in cities I didn't recognize, talking like old friends, where we argued about where to live next or what to name a cat. One night, I even dreamed of our wedding, under autumn trees, orange leaves like confetti in the air. When I woke, my chest ached. Then something worse happened. I called Margot, my best friend since middle school, the one who'd taken me to urgent care when I broke my wrist. Except she didn't remember it that way. "You never broke your wrist, Erin," she said, laughing softly. "You always say you're clumsy, but you've never broken a bone." I'd remember that? I froze. Yes, I did. I had a cast for a month? No, she said, gently. I think you're confusing yourself with someone else. The line went quiet as I tried to breathe through the growing fog in my head. I checked old photos. Found nothing. Not even a hospital bill. It was like the story I remembered had been erased, and something new had taken its place. What scared me most wasn't that he knew so much. It was that the more I listened, the more I started forgetting who I used to be. Still shaken from the phone call with Margot, I found myself spiraling. Had I misremembered? Had the details of my past truly shifted, or was I unraveling something deeper inside myself? Some fragile thread of reality I'd always taken for granted? I needed someone to ground me, someone to talk to face. So I reached out to Callie. Callie was the kind of friend you didn't talk to every day, but when you did, it was like no time had passed. We met in college during a study abroad trip and had stayed loosely in touch ever since. Smart, sarcastic, someone with a keen radar for red flags. If anyone could help me make sense of this, it was her. I texted, "Hey, can I run something weird by you? Need someone who won't call me crazy." She responded almost instantly, "Always. Coffee tomorrow?" We met at a corner cafe that overlooked the old church steps. Callie was already at a table sipping her drink. Her green scarf stood out brightly against the gray sky. I sat down, nerves frayed. This might sound insane, I warned before laying everything out. Liam, the strange memories, the things he knew, the details that no longer matched reality. I expected her to laugh, or at least look concerned. Instead, she listened, her brow furrowed deeper with each detail. She didn't interrupt, just sat there, eyes focused and unmoving. When I was done, she said quietly, "You're describing something very close to what happened to my cousin." "What?" I blinked. "Not exactly the same," she added quickly, "but someone she swore she'd known for years just stopped existing. Photos gone, texts disappeared, even her journals didn't mention him anymore. But she remembered him. Viscerally. Said it was like she lost part of herself." "What did she do?" "She moved away," Callie said. "Said the city was full of echoes." My throat tightened. "You believe me?" Callie didn't hesitate. "I don't think you're lying, and I don't think you're crazy. But Erin, maybe this thing, whatever it is, it doesn't want to be understood." I exhaled slowly, a strange sense of relief washing over me. At least I wasn't alone. She squeezed my hand across the table. "Stay grounded. Write everything down. If your memory is slipping, leave yourself breadcrumbs." That night, I started a journal. I wrote down every moment with Liam, every word, every feeling, and then the next morning, Callie was gone. Not gone as in didn't answer texts, gone as in erased. Her contact was missing from my phone. Our text history blank. I checked my email for any exchanges. Nothing. I drove to her apartment, the one I'd visited dozens of times. The mailbox had a different name. A woman answered the door and looked confused when I asked for Callie. "There's no one here by that name," she said politely. I returned to the cafe, retraced our steps. The barista on duty said no one matching her description had been in yesterday. No one had ordered under Callie. I sat down at the same table and checked the journal I'd written in the night before. The last page, where I'd described everything Callie had said, was blank. Only the faintest impression of a pen remained, like something had erased her, and my memory had barely managed to hold on. I left the cafe trembling, because now I wasn't just losing pieces of my past. It seemed like someone, or something, was erasing the people who tried to help me. After Callie vanished, the days lost their rhythm. They didn't stop, but they didn't move forward either. I began to notice odd repetitions, little things that repeated with almost mechanical precision. The same song playing at the same moment in the cafe, a child dropping a toy on the bus, same toy, same stop, same startled cry. Even the clouds overhead began to feel recycled. It was like the world had entered a loop, and I was the only one who noticed. Liam, of course, was still there, no longer hiding in chance meetings. He now appeared every day, always somewhere I didn't expect but never surprised to see me. One morning, I opened the door to leave for work and found him standing at the bottom of my apartment steps. He didn't move, didn't speak, just waited, as though he knew I wouldn't shut the door. And I didn't. I think the world's stuck, I said, before I even understood the words myself. He nodded slowly. Yes, it happens sometimes. What is this? I asked. A dream, a trick, am I losing my mind? He looked at me with something like sadness in his expression. No, you're remembering more than you're supposed to. What does that mean? He sat down on the steps. You think of time as a line. But sometimes it folds, and sometimes, rarely, two lines get close enough that things begin to leak through. You're not making sense. I am, he said softly. You just don't remember the rules. That night I didn't sleep, my phone glitched repeatedly, notifications came in at the exact same time, 2:37 a.m., 4 nights in a row, always blank, always silent. By the third time I left the phone off. In the morning, I went to our park, and watched the squirrels dart between leaves. And just like the day before, a small white dog trotted across the path and paused by the bench. Same collar, same bark. The owner, a woman in a red scarf, laughed exactly the same way she had yesterday. I checked my watch. It was 3:38 p.m. yesterday. It had been 3:18 when I passed that bench. Exactly. I returned home, pulled out my journal, wrote the events down, but when I read over the previous pages, I noticed something chilling. I had already written today's events, yesterday, word for word, the woman, the dog, the laugh, the time. It was there, scrawled in my own handwriting, with a date marked before it happened. I closed the book and sat there for a long time. When I finally looked up, Liam was standing in the hallway outside my door. I hadn't heard him arrive. He didn't knock, just waited. Please, he said gently, let me explain. I let him in, not because I trusted him, but because by then I was sure I wasn't just losing my grip on time. I was inside someone else's design, and that someone was him. I don't know what I expected when I let him in. Answers, maybe. Explanations. Something rational, or at least something that felt like truth. But all I got was silence. Liam standing in the center of my living room like a shadow that had forgotten how to vanish. He didn't speak right away. He wandered to my bookshelves, lightly touching the spines of books he shouldn't have recognized, his fingertips hovering over the one I always read in winter. His gaze fell on the framed photo of me and my dad, taken on the pier when I was 12. You cried after that picture, he murmured. You dropped your ice cream, and your dad bought you another before you could even ask. My throat tightened. That detail wasn't in the photo. That moment had lived only in my memory. I never told anyone that. I know, he handed me something then. A small envelope sealed with no stamp, no postmark, no return address. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of thick, lined paper. My handwriting, my style, the rounded letters, the loops on the eyes, even the way I crossed my eyes high and short, it was mine. But I didn't write the message. Erin, you're starting to remember. Don't run from it. Let him tell you everything. You asked for this. Trust him. The date at the top was from 3 months ago. I sat down hard. I didn't write this? I whispered. You did? Liam said gently. Just not here. Not in this version of your life. I didn't believe him. Except I kind of did. I stared at the letter for a long time, trying to find imperfections, inconsistencies, some proof that it was a forgery. But it was perfect. Too perfect. The kind of mimicry that could only come from someone who had access to every private habit, every instinctive flick of my pen. How do you have this? I asked. I didn't write it, he said. You gave it to me? When? When you left. I looked up sharply. Yes, he said, slowly. One you made the choice to forget. I tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. That doesn't make any sense. It will, he promised. If you let it. He looked tired then. Not physically, but emotionally, like someone who had waited too long for someone to come back and had begun to lose hope. His shoulders drooped slightly. His face, once unreadable, now looked strangely vulnerable. I don't want to lie to you, he said. But telling you everything at once, it could break you. You made that clear when we parted. I didn't part from you. I never knew you. He didn't argue. Just looked at me the way people do when they're remembering a dream that once felt real. That night, I didn't sleep. I left the letter on my nightstand, staring at it under the low glow of my lamp. The signature, my own name, signed with a curl on the E that I hadn't used in years. It felt like a whisper across time. A version of me I didn't know, speaking to the one who was still struggling to believe any of this was possible. In the quiet, a single thought rose in my mind. What if I wasn't the first version of me to ask the questions? And what if Liam was just the only one still answering? It was raining the day he told me. Not a heavy rain, just a soft, persistent drizzle that wrapped the city in a layer of mist and silver. The kind of rain that quiets everything, that makes the world feel hushed and suspended in time. We met at the greenhouse on the edge of the botanical gardens, a place I hadn't visited in years but had somehow remembered that morning with sharp clarity. I didn't tell him I was going there. He was already waiting inside. I think I'm ready, I told him as I stepped through the doors, the scent of damp soil and orchids blooming thick in the air. He didn't ask what I meant. Just nodded and motioned to a bench near the water lilies. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the quiet trickle of water over stone. Then he began. "There's a version of your life," he said softly, "where we met 5 years ago. Not here, somewhere very much like here, but different enough that most people never notice. You and I were close, more than close. We built a life together." He paused and I didn't interrupt. "We traveled," he continued. "Grew things together. You painted. I built a little shop. You called it our second act." His smile was small and almost broken. "You were different there. Lighter, I think. But still you." I swallowed hard. "So what happened?" "You made a choice," he said. "A hard one. You gave it all up." "Why would I do that?" "Because that version of you was dying." My breath caught. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the weather. "You had a condition. Rare, untreatable. We tried everything. And then one day, some group, I don't know who they were, not fully, offered a way out. A program, they called it. A chance to migrate. Move your consciousness into a neighboring version of yourself in another life, one where you were still healthy. A new timeline," they said. He looked at me then. "You didn't want to forget. But it was the only way the transfer would work cleanly. You asked me to find you again. To remind you." I stared at him, trying to grasp the words, trying to feel them as truth. "You're saying I'm not from here?" He nodded. "You're not just you. You're you from somewhere else. And I came through a crack, a small one, just big enough to follow your echo." "This is insane," I whispered, but I didn't stand. I didn't run. "You started remembering sooner than we thought," he said. "The park, the coffee, the letters, it's all coming back faster than expected. That's why the loops are happening. The more you remember, the more the fabric tears." "And Callie?" I asked. "Mike's broke. She got too close. Whatever system is keeping these timelines stable, it prunes anomalies. People who interfere. That's why I've had to be careful." "You mean she's gone because of me? Not because of you?" He said gently. "Because of what you're becoming." I buried my face in my hands. The weight of it was too much, too big, too far beyond my understanding. Lives layered atop lives, choices reverberating across worlds. "I didn't want to forget," I whispered. "No," he said. "You cried. You begged to remember. You made me promise I'd come find you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and glinting. A locket, gold, delicate, with a tiny painted "Forget Me" knot on the front. He opened it. Inside was a photo of me. Not the me from today, but slightly older. Hair longer, eyes crinkled in laughter. Leaning against him. "You gave me this," he said. "Said it would help." I reached out and touched it, and for a heartbeat, a rush of warmth of recognition flooded through me, like the ghost of a memory not quite formed. We sat in silence again, as the rain tapped softly against the greenhouse glass, and for the first time I believed him. In the days that followed, the world I thought I knew began to fall apart. Not dramatically, not with fire or thunder, but with a quiet erasure that felt more intimate and terrifying. It began with my apartment. I returned home one afternoon and found my key didn't fit. At first, I assumed I had used the wrong one, but when I double-checked, the familiar brass key still refused to turn in the lock. Confused, I knocked. A young couple answered. The woman looked at me with gentle confusion, her voice kind. "Can I help you?" This is my apartment," I said. "I live here." She blinked. "I'm sorry. We moved in 6 days ago. I think you must be mistaken." "No," I insisted. "I've lived here for 3 years. My name is Erin Voss. Apartment 4B? The man behind her shook his head. "We've been here since winter." "You sure you've got the right building?" I backed away slowly. Down the stairs. Onto the street. I stood there in the fading afternoon light, looking up at the windows I knew intimately, except now they didn't know me. I called my landlord. Disconnected. I went to the leasing office. They had no record of my name. Not on any lease. Not on any payment history. I checked my banking app. Rent payments had stopped 3 months ago. I stared at the screen numb. My name was still on the account, but everything else was rearranged. Utility bills gone. Automatic drafts disappeared. It was as though I had quietly vacated the space and simply never looked back. I sat on a park bench for hours, my backpack pressed against my knees, trying to piece it all together. That evening, I went to Margot's. She opened the door with a hesitant smile. "Hi, it's me," I said. "Erin." She looked at me longer than she should have. "I'm sorry," she said. "Do we know each other?" My throat closed. "Margot, please, we've been friends since 6th grade. We were in that group project together. You made me try sushi for the first time. We used to go to the lake house every summer." She took a step back. "I think you have the wrong person." I backed away in silence. The door closed gently. I stumbled down the street like a ghost, caught between memory and invention. Later that night, I went to the cafe where I always rode on Sundays. It was gone, not closed, gone. The windows were boarded, a faded, coming soon sign promised a new bistro in the spring. No one I asked remembered the old place. No one remembered the strawberry tart I used to order, or the chalkboard where I once scribbled down the first line of a poem. The city itself was forgetting me. I found refuge at a small hotel near the edge of downtown. I used cash to pay for 2 nights. The clerk didn't ask questions. I didn't offer any. The next morning, I looked in the mirror and studied my reflection. My face was the same, but something behind my eyes looked thinner, like a layer of memory had peeled away, leaving raw skin beneath. I called Lum. He picked up on the first ring. "I'm disappearing," I whispered. "No," he said gently. "You're shifting? I have nowhere to go." "You were never meant to stay in this version forever," he said. "But you're not alone." I didn't ask what he meant. I couldn't. The city that once felt like home had turned into a hollow stage set. Familiar streets now led nowhere. Familiar faces had no names. I wandered all day without direction. By dusk, I found myself back in Westdale Park, where it had all begun. Liam was there, not seated this time, standing, waiting. When he saw me, he didn't smile. Instead, he said quietly, "It's time." I followed him, not because I trusted him fully, how could I? But because by then I had no one else. I was a name without a place, a body without a home. Even the park felt like it was trying to push me away. So I followed Liam into the unfamiliar streets of the old district, where the buildings still bore ironwork balconies and the brick was weathered to memory. We walked for nearly 30 minutes in silence, every step deeper into a part of the city I thought I knew but now realized I'd never dared to explore. It felt old, like a set built before time modernized everything else, a place removed from progress. At the edge of an alley, he stopped beside an unmarked wooden door, weather-beaten and strangely warm to the touch. He looked at me and said, "You may not be able to come back." "I'm already gone," I replied. Inside, the space was quiet and glowing with amber light, oil lamps it seemed, though I saw no cords or bulbs. The room smelled of lavender and dust. A large circular mirror dominated the far wall, swirling faintly like water held in tension. "This is a nexus," Liam said. "Not quite your world. Not quite mine. A pocket where the 2 timelines meet, where memories try to settle." I stepped forward cautiously, the wooden floor creaking underfoot. "What do you want from me?" I asked, voice low. "I want you to choose," he said. "To remember. To return. Return to what?" I turned on him. "To a life I don't remember. To pain I didn't live through." He didn't flinch. "To yourself." I shook my head, pacing. "I don't know who I am anymore." "You're still her?" he said gently. "Just quiet. She's waiting." I sat down, more out of exhaustion than surrender. My body ached, my head throbbed with conflicting memories. I remembered my favorite childhood books, but in one version they were fairy tales, in another astronomy guides. I remembered learning to swim twice, in 2 different lakes, with 2 different parents. Everything was unraveling. "I'm not her," I whispered. "I can't be." Liam knelt beside me. "You're not exactly her. But you're not just this either. The version of you that asked me to find you." She was strong. Brave, she risked everything to survive. She left behind the pain, the illness, the fading. And she left me to bring her back. He opened a small wooden box and handed me a chain, a key old-fashioned, iron cold. "Use this," he said, pointing to the mirror. "It opens the memory vault." I stared at the mirror. It shimmered faintly like it was breathing. "I'm scared," I admitted. "I know," he said, "but you asked me to remind you of one thing." "What?" He leaned closer, eyes shining. "You said, even if I forget everything, don't let me forget how much I wanted to live." Tears welled in my eyes. I hadn't cried in days, maybe weeks. But something inside me cracked open. I stood, the key heavy in my hand. My reflection stared back, exhausted, lost, and deeply uncertain. And then it blinked. Not me, my reflection. It blinked. I gasped. The key vibrated ever so slightly. "Turn it," Liam said. "If you're ready." I raised the key to the base of the mirror, to a notch I hadn't seen before. It fit. I turned it. The mirror rippled once, then flooded with light. Images poured through: laughter on a sunlit porch, late nights reading beside a fire, a kitten curled in my lap. The pain of goodbye, the needle in my arm, Liam's tearful goodbye. I remembered, all of it. The truth came rushing back like a dam breaking. But it didn't feel like salvation. It felt like being rewritten. The flood of memory didn't stop. It hit in waves, shuddering through every corner of my mind, as though my brain were rearranging itself around a blueprint I'd forgotten and I drew. The porch, the firelight, the smell of rosemary on Liam's coat, the ache in my limbs from the illness that stole pieces of me, one morning at a time. I remembered the day I said goodbye. The sterile room. The contract I signed with shaking hands. The woman in the white coat explaining that the transfer would preserve my mind, but not my heart. "You will not remember him," she had said. "It's part of the firewall." But now I remembered him, and the pain of it nearly brought me to my knees. I turned to face Liam, tears streaking my face. Why now? Why tell me now? His expression was unreadable, calm, but too calm, his hands folded before him like someone delivering a eulogy. Because this was always the end, he said. The point where remembering becomes choosing. Choosing? You can stay here, in this world, but your presence destabilizes it, the people who vanish. The city forgetting you. That's the system trying to repair itself. You were never supposed to cross over. I only brought you far enough for the decision. I stared at him, heart pounding. You want me to leave? He stepped closer. No, I want you to come back. But you said the transfer saved me? That I'm healthy here? He nodded. Yes, but this life isn't yours. It never was, it was borrowed. You're asking me to go back to a body that's dying? No, he said, to one that already died. I blinked, stunned. What? You didn't survive, Erin. The transfer failed. They told me it worked, but they lied. Your body collapsed the moment your consciousness was copied. Not moved. Copied. You're a version, a ghost, a survival echo. I backed away. That can't be. I'm alive. You are, here, but not there. Not anymore. You're not her. Not entirely. You're a shard. And so am I. His eyes softened with guilt. I've been living in this shard too long, waiting, hoping. But I didn't come just to remind you. I came to replace what I lost. I felt the truth before he said it. You mean me? He nodded once. You're not her, but you're close, and I've been so alone. The room spun. You were going to keep me here? I said quietly. I needed something of you. Anything? But I'm not her. He closed his eyes. I know, but for a moment I almost believed. My pulse thudded in my ears. I looked at the mirror again. It was dark now, the light gone. The key no longer warm in my hand. What happens if I leave? You fade, he said, slowly. Point, you won't feel it, just sleep. And if I stay, this world will keep unraveling. They'll come for you eventually, for both of us. A long silence. You were gonna let it happen? I whispered. You were going to let it all fall apart, just to have a piece of her again. He didn't deny it. A tremble rose in his voice. You don't know what it's like. To lose someone in every version of the world, to chase their shadow across dimensions. I don't expect you to forgive me. I walked to the door. I'm not her? I said again. He nodded, tearfully this time. I know. I'm me. And I choose to live. The door creaked open outside. The city waited, ruined, fraying at the edges, but still there. Still mine, if only I could hold it together. Behind me, I heard him whisper, I'm sorry. But I didn't turn back. The wind felt different when I stepped outside. Not colder exactly, just clearer. Like something in the atmosphere had changed now that the mirror was locked again, its light snuffed out. I walked through the same streets that once seemed to forget me. This time, they didn't fight. They didn't recognize me either. But at least they didn't resist. Liam didn't follow. I didn't know if I'd ever see him again. I wasn't even sure if he still existed, or if that strange threshold space had vanished behind me, closing like a page turned too quickly to mark. The world wasn't restored overnight. It didn't reset with clarity or snap back to a version I remembered. No, this was still a fractured place, where my name echoed in some corners and was a blank slate in others. I returned to the hotel, slept, ate, wrote in my journal every detail, every word, in case it all began to slip again. A week later, my old apartment building was still occupied by strangers, but when I passed by on a quiet morning, the woman in the window gave me a long look. As if something in her subconscious stirred. She didn't smile. But she didn't look away either. Margot never remembered me. I sent a letter to her old address, unsigned. Maybe it would mean nothing to her. Maybe a seed would be planted. As for the others, the places, the friends, the loops, they seemed to settle, quietly. Like the world had agreed to let me stay if only I stopped asking the wrong questions. I started over. A new name on a rental lease. A part-time job at a bookstore, mornings filled with coffee, afternoons in the park. Yes, even Westa, the oak tree was still there. No Liam, not anymore. I kept the letter, the one in my hand it often, but I kept it close. Not as proof, as a reminder, that I had once chosen to live, no matter the cost. Sometimes, in dreams, I see her, the version of me who made that first choice. She never speaks. But she stands in light, not shadow. Watching, maybe grateful, maybe waiting. I think of Liam too, not as a villain, not even as a stranger, but as someone who loved too deeply to let go, and in doing so, nearly unraveled both our worlds. I hope he finds peace, even if it's not with me. As for me, I live carefully now. I keep my memories close. I anchor myself to small routines. I smile at the barista who always remembers my drink. I pet the dogs that pass by. I ask names, and I repeat them back as if saying them aloud roots them in this reality. And when a stranger says my name, I walk away, not because I'm afraid, but because I've already met the one man who shouldn't have known it. In this story, a woman named Erin is called by name by a stranger she doesn't recognize. The man, Liam, seems to know intimate details about her life, things no outsider could possibly know. As they continue to cross paths, Erin learns that she's living in a version of her life she wasn't meant to inhabit. Liam reveals that in another reality, they were deeply in love, and she transferred her consciousness into a healthy version of herself before dying. But now, their meeting begins unraveling both worlds. Erin is forced to choose, accept a fabricated comfort or reclaim her independence. She ultimately walks away from Liam, choosing to live life as herself, not as the memory of someone else's past love. She rebuilds slowly, aware now of the fragility of identity and the importance of boundaries. These stories show the consequences and limits of trusting strangers. Have you ever experienced something like this? Someone knowing too much? Share your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe for more full-length stories like this one.